The Lean Startup. The Lean Startup Story, unveiling the secrets to building a business that works. Have you ever wondered how some businesses rise to the top while others fail? How do you build a company that can withstand the stormy waves of uncertainty and constantly adapt to change? That's the exact question Eric Ries set out to answer when he wrote The Lean Startup. This book isn't just a guide to building businesses, it's a revolution in how we think about entrepreneurship. The story behind The Lean Startup: Eric Ries didn't just sit in an ivory tower and theorize about business strategies, he was in the trenches. Before writing the book, he was a startup founder himself. His experience building and failing with a startup called IMVU became the catalyst for everything that would come after. In the early days of IMVU, Ries and his team followed the traditional path of a startup. They built a product, launched it, and waited for customers to flood in. But instead of seeing success, they faced disappointment. Their product wasn't resonating with customers. They realized they were spending too much time developing something no one wanted. It was this painful learning moment that sparked the idea for the Lean Startup methodology, a new approach that focused on building products that people actually wanted, through constant testing, learning, and pivoting. Why Eric Ries wrote the book: Eric's frustration with the traditional way of doing business led him to realize that there had to be a better way, one that minimized waste and maximized learning. The book was his way of sharing the lessons he learned in the trenches. He wanted to help other entrepreneurs avoid the same mistakes, reduce the risk of failure, and create businesses that are more adaptable to changing environments. The key idea? Start small, experiment quickly, and iterate fast. Through this method, businesses could test assumptions, measure progress, and adjust their strategies in real time, without investing months or years in the wrong direction. Key takeaways from the Lean Startup: build, measure, learn. The core principle of the Lean Startup is that the first step in building a company isn't just building, it's testing and learning. Instead of spending months creating a perfect product, startups should build a minimum viable product, MVP, test it with real customers, and learn from their feedback. Validated learning: this is all about testing hypotheses with real data. It's not just about having a great idea, it's about learning whether that idea works or not, based on actual customer responses. Pivot or persevere: one of the most exciting concepts in the book is the idea of the pivot. Instead of stubbornly following a business plan, entrepreneurs should be ready to change direction based on what they learn from their experiments. It's about being flexible and not being afraid to make changes when necessary. The impact: since its publication, The Lean Startup has become a Bible for entrepreneurs worldwide. It's not just a book, it's a movement that has shaped how people approach startups, innovation, and business strategy. Millions of startups, from tech giants like Dropbox and Airbnb to smaller companies and solo entrepreneurs, have adopted the principles of the Lean Startup to navigate the volatile world of business. It's helped them launch with less risk, adapt quickly, and find market fit faster. But the Lean Startup isn't only for tech startups, it's reshaped how all kinds of industries, from education to healthcare, approach innovation. The idea of testing assumptions and being willing to pivot has inspired countless entrepreneurs, employees, and even corporate leaders to rethink their strategies and business models. Why you should watch the video: in this video, I'll dive deeper into the lessons Eric Ries shares and break down the most important insights from the Lean Startup. Whether you're a budding entrepreneur or just someone curious about how to innovate in today's fast-paced world, this book is a game changer. It'll teach you how to experiment, fail fast, and, most importantly, succeed smarter. So grab a seat, because this video is not just about business strategies, it's about changing the way we think, learn, and grow in the world of entrepreneurship. Part 1: Vision of the Lean Startup, focusing on the 4 key topics you provided. 1. Start. The journey of a startup begins with a single, powerful question: what problem are you trying to solve? Eric Ries kicks off the Start chapter by stressing the importance of clarity in purpose. He argues that successful startups are not defined by their ideas or innovations, but by their ability to solve real problems for real customers. This phase is all about defining the startup's mission and ensuring that it's aimed at solving a critical pain point. A significant point here is the importance of the founder's vision. Many entrepreneurs are driven by their ideas, but Ries advises that the focus should be on learning what the customer truly needs, not just what the founders believe. This is where the concept of validated learning enters. The key idea is not just to build a product and hope it works, but to start by learning and testing assumptions before moving forward. Key takeaway: start with a clear understanding of the problem and focus on learning rather than assuming. The start phase is all about setting up a foundation for future experiments and learning. 2. Define. In this chapter, Ries emphasizes the importance of defining your startup's core assumptions. Startups are often built on hypotheses, ideas about the market, customers, and the product that have yet to be proven. The goal here is to transform these assumptions into something testable through the creation of a minimum viable product (MVP). The MVP is not just a prototype. It's the simplest version of the product that allows you to test your core assumptions. By defining these assumptions early on, startups can quickly determine what works and what doesn't, without investing too much time and money into something that might fail. Ries talks about how entrepreneurs often become too attached to their ideas. To avoid this, he recommends using tools like innovative accounting to measure progress based on data rather than vanity metrics. This allows startups to define clear, actionable metrics that can guide decisions. Key takeaway: in this phase, startups must define their key assumptions and turn them into hypotheses to be tested with real data, using the MVP as a tool to validate these assumptions early and cheaply. 3. Learn. The Learn chapter is all about gathering feedback from real customers. Ries explains that once you have a working MVP, the next step is to test it in the market, learn from the data, and adjust accordingly. This chapter introduces the concept of the build measure learn loop, which is central to the lean startup philosophy. The build measure learn loop works like this: you build your MVP, measure its performance in the real world, and learn from the feedback. The feedback you receive from customers should guide the next iteration of your product, pushing you to adjust and improve. This cycle allows startups to pivot or persevere based on what the data tells them. A key part of learning is also learning how to measure the right things, moving beyond vanity metrics like app downloads or website visits to metrics that show real user engagement and product success. Key takeaway: the heart of innovation in the startup world comes from learning quickly and adapting based on customer feedback. The faster a startup learns from its customers, the faster it can adapt and improve. 4. Experiment. The Experiment chapter takes the learning process even further, emphasizing that experimentation is essential to innovation. Ries urges entrepreneurs to view their startup journey as a series of experiments, where each step is a hypothesis that gets tested with real-world data. The startup's goal is to continuously experiment, learning from these experiments, and iterating the product accordingly. What sets this chapter apart is its focus on the scientific method. Just like scientists test hypotheses, entrepreneurs should run experiments to test assumptions and use the results to either validate or invalidate their hypotheses. This scientific approach leads to actionable insights that drive product development, and more importantly, help avoid the common pitfall of creating products that don't resonate with customers. Ries also talks about the importance of making small bets rather than big, risky leaps. By testing small changes and measuring their impact, startups can move toward their goal in a more sustainable and manageable way. Key takeaway: experimentation should be built into every phase of a startup's development. By testing ideas on a small scale, startups can minimize risk and continuously improve their product. Conclusion of Part 1, Vision. In Part 1, Vision, Eric Ries lays the foundation for the lean startup methodology. He highlights the importance of starting with a clear problem to solve, defining assumptions, learning through testing, and experimenting continuously to validate those assumptions. Each of these steps is aimed at minimizing waste, whether that's time, money, or resources, while maximizing learning and adaptability. Through this part of the book, Ries stresses that visionary entrepreneurs should not just hold on to their ideas but should be open to feedback and ready to experiment. It's about building a foundation of learning and adapting, rather than simply executing on an idea. Let's dive into Part 2, Steer of the Lean Startup, and cover the 4 key topics you mentioned: leap, test, measure, pivot, or persevere. 5. Leap. In the Leap chapter, Eric Ries tackles one of the most difficult but crucial aspects of building a startup: taking the leap from idea to action. This chapter emphasizes the challenge that every entrepreneur faces, turning an abstract idea into something tangible. A lot of people get stuck in the planning phase, but the lean startup approach is about taking action and testing your ideas early, regardless of whether they are fully formed. Ries introduces the concept of the leap of faith assumptions, which are the most critical assumptions that underpin a startup's business model. For instance, an assumption could be that customers will be willing to pay for your product, or that a specific market exists for the solution you're offering. These leaps of faith are the foundation of your startup's hypothesis and must be tested to reduce the risks of failure. Entrepreneurs need to leap into action and start validating their ideas through real-world experiments and data. The key message here is that the real world is the ultimate test. You cannot simply theorize your way to success. You need to move beyond speculation and make decisions based on real data. Key takeaway: the Leap chapter encourages entrepreneurs to take calculated risks by identifying and testing the most critical assumptions early on, rather than relying on guesswork or assumptions. 6. Test. In this chapter, Ries dives deep into the process of testing hypotheses. The core principle here is that every startup is based on a set of hypotheses, assumptions about customers, the product, the market, etc. The only way to know if these hypotheses are correct is by testing them systematically. The lean startup methodology emphasizes experimentation as the way to validate, or invalidate, these assumptions. To test hypotheses, startups should create an MVP, minimum viable product, the simplest version of their product that allows them to test their key assumptions quickly and cheaply. This MVP isn't meant to be perfect, it's meant to get customer feedback to see if your hypothesis holds up in the real world. Ries stresses the importance of scientific experimentation, setting clear hypotheses, designing experiments, and collecting actionable data. This approach minimizes the risk of building something that customers don't want or need. Key takeaway: testing is a systematic and scientific process. It involves creating MVPs, running experiments, gathering data, and learning from real-world feedback to determine if your assumptions are correct. 7. Measure. The Measure chapter focuses on the crucial step of measuring progress based on real data rather than gut feelings or assumptions. This phase is all about evaluating whether the experiments and tests conducted in the previous phase are moving the startup closer to achieving its goals. Ries warns against the danger of vanity metrics, numbers that look good but don't provide actionable insights, such as website hits or app downloads. Instead, he introduces the idea of actionable metrics, which are data points that actually guide decisions and reflect the startup's real progress. He also talks about innovation accounting, a system of measuring progress in a way that helps startups make informed decisions about whether to pivot, persevere, or give up. Innovation accounting involves defining clear, measurable milestones for learning and progress and focusing on metrics that track the impact of a startup's actions, rather than just output. The point of measuring is to determine whether your product is moving toward a sustainable business model. If the numbers are not improving, it may be time to pivot or make significant adjustments. Key takeaway: measuring progress isn't about tracking superficial numbers. It's about using actionable metrics that provide real insights into whether your startup is on the right track or if changes need to be made. 8. Pivot, or persevere. In this final chapter of Part 2, Steer, Ries presents one of the most critical decisions a startup will face. Should you pivot or persevere? This decision comes after testing your assumptions and measuring progress. If the tests show that your product is not meeting the needs of your customers or that your business model is flawed, it's time to pivot, make a fundamental change to your product, strategy, or vision. A pivot is not a failure, it's a way of adapting based on what you've learned from your experiments and data. On the other hand, if the tests show positive results and there's clear evidence that the product is gaining traction, it's time to persevere, keep going in the same direction, refining and improving your product based on what you've learned. The process of pivoting isn't easy, but it's essential for the success of a startup. Ries argues that startups should not be afraid to change direction if the data supports it. In fact, the faster a startup can make this decision, the better. The longer you wait, the more resources you waste on a strategy that's not working. Key takeaway: the pivot or persevere decision is a crucial moment for startups. By relying on data and feedback, entrepreneurs can make the informed decision to either stick with their current strategy or pivot in a new direction to improve their chances of success. Conclusion of Part 2, Steer. Part 2, Steer in the Lean Startup focuses on the active process of steering a startup in the right direction through continuous experimentation and feedback loops. Eric Ries introduces entrepreneurs to the critical stages of taking that initial leap of faith, testing assumptions, measuring progress through actionable metrics, and then deciding whether to pivot or persevere based on the insights gained. This part of the book highlights that the startup journey is not a straight line, it's a dynamic, iterative process that requires constant steering to navigate successfully. The key takeaway here is that startups need to be flexible and adaptive. Through constant testing and measurement, entrepreneurs can steer their businesses toward success, learning and improving along the way. Part 3, Accelerate, and cover the last set of chapters from the Lean Startup, chapters 9 to 14. I'll break down each topic and provide a deeper look to help you create a comprehensive summary for your YouTube video. 9. Batch. In the Batch chapter, Eric Ries explores the importance of batch size in the context of building and delivering products. One of the core ideas here is that smaller batches of work are more efficient and allow startups to adapt more quickly. Ries explains that traditionally, companies produce large batches of products, whether that's building features, producing inventory, or rolling out a marketing campaign. However, this can lead to waste and inefficiency, because it's harder to gather feedback and make adjustments when you're working in large batches. By working in smaller batches, startups can speed up feedback loops and improve their products faster. Smaller batches allow for faster testing, quicker learning, and rapid iteration. Whether it's code, products, or marketing efforts, reducing batch size helps you avoid delays and spot problems early, making it easier to pivot when necessary. Key takeaway: the smaller the batch, the quicker the feedback. Reducing batch sizes increases speed, reduces waste, and allows startups to adjust more quickly. 10. Grow. The Grow chapter is about scaling the startup after initial validation. It's about moving from small experiments and MVPs to building a sustainable and scalable business. Ries talks about how growth in startups often follows the growth engines of the business. There are 3 primary ways to grow a business. 1. Sticky innovation, creating a product that people want to keep using, ensuring that existing customers stay. 2. Scalable innovation, finding a way to acquire new customers at scale, often through marketing or viral effects. 3. Paid advertising, leveraging paid channels for rapid customer acquisition. However, growing a startup isn't just about gaining more customers, it's about sustainable growth. That means using data-driven decisions to scale at the right time and in the right way, ensuring that every customer adds value to the company. Key takeaway: growth isn't just about expansion, it's about building sustainable, data-driven systems that allow you to scale effectively. 11. Adapt. In the Adapt chapter, Ries focuses on how to adjust strategies based on feedback and changing market conditions. He discusses the importance of adaptability in startups, emphasizing that companies must evolve over time in response to what they learn from their experiments. The key concept here is that startups need to be adaptive and ready to make changes as new information comes in. This means not sticking rigidly to a business plan or product roadmap if it no longer makes sense based on customer feedback. Being adaptive can include pivoting, adjusting business models, improving product features, or refining customer acquisition strategies. Ries emphasizes that innovation is a process, and it often requires course corrections along the way. Successful startups are those that remain flexible and are willing to experiment, iterate, and adapt based on real data. Key takeaway: adaptability is a critical trait for startup success. You must be willing to make changes based on new data and feedback, keeping your business model and product aligned with customer needs. 12. Innovate. The Innovate chapter is all about fostering a culture of innovation within the organization. Ries argues that innovation isn't just about the product. It's about innovating in how you build and manage your business. He discusses how startups can introduce continuous innovation by fostering a company culture that encourages experimentation and learning. One of the key aspects of creating an innovative culture is ensuring that the team remains open to feedback, willing to experiment, and motivated by the desire to improve. The more a company encourages innovation internally, the better its chances are of continuously finding new ways to create value. Ries stresses that the process of innovation should be integrated into everything a company does, not just the development of new products. Every area of the business, from customer service to operations, can benefit from an innovative approach. Key takeaway: innovation should be a continual process, integrated into the company's culture and every aspect of the business, not just the product development phase. 13. Epilogue. Waste not. In the epilogue of the book, Waste Not, Eric Ries reiterates the overarching principle of the lean startup methodology: reducing waste in all areas of business. He emphasizes that the biggest waste in startups is often time, the time spent building products that customers don't want or testing hypotheses that don't hold up. Ries calls on entrepreneurs to adopt a mindset that values efficiency and learning. Rather than relying on traditional business methods of massive upfront investment or large-scale launches, he encourages them to focus on learning quickly and adapting faster, thus reducing wasted resources. This final message is a reminder that success isn't just about working harder, it's about working smarter, with a focus on continuous learning and using data to guide decision-making. Key takeaway: the epilogue reinforces the need to reduce waste, not just in terms of financial resources, but also time and effort, by adopting a lean approach that prioritizes learning over execution. 14. Join the movement. In the final chapter, Ries encourages readers to embrace the lean startup movement and become part of a global community of entrepreneurs and innovators who are redefining the way businesses are built. He invites individuals, companies, and investors to adopt lean startup principles in their work and spread the methodology to help others. The chapter emphasizes that innovation is everyone's responsibility. It's not just about individual entrepreneurs or tech startups. Corporations, large organizations, and institutions can also benefit from these principles. Ries envisions a world where more startups use lean principles to reduce the risk of failure, create more value, and contribute to solving global problems. Ries calls on readers to take action, spread the ideas behind Lean Startup, and help build a better, more efficient, and adaptive entrepreneurial ecosystem. Key takeaway: the Join the Movement chapter encourages readers to not just learn the Lean Startup principles, but to become ambassadors for this new way of thinking, helping to create a global shift in how startups and businesses approach innovation. Conclusion of Part 3, Accelerate. Part 3, Accelerate is all about moving a startup from validation to scaling. Eric Ries outlines the processes and strategies that allow startups to move faster, grow sustainably, adapt to change, and innovate continuously. From experimenting in smaller batches to fostering a culture of innovation, the focus here is on acceleration, speeding up the learning process and scaling efficiently while minimizing waste. By emphasizing the importance of adaptability, sustainable growth, and innovation, this part of the book gives startups the tools they need to accelerate their journey toward success. The Lean Startup movement encourages entrepreneurs to work smarter, not harder, and join a growing network of businesses that prioritize learning and continuous improvement. This detailed summary for Part 3. Accelerate will help you convey the core messages of this section and explain how entrepreneurs can apply these principles to grow their businesses effectively. Let me know if you need any additional insights or clarifications.